you go, mate?
I'm doing well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Really looking forward to getting stuck in.
You're a man who loves his surfing, I know. What have you been up to during the lockdown? Have you been able to get out?
Yeah, I've been trying to surf as much as possible. We've been like another thing with over the last kind of 3 or 4 months, the waves have just been incredible. So we've been like really, really lucky in that sense as well. Um, I've got some really good surf over at Stradbroke Island, a few good waves at Snapper over the last couple of months, even though it's just incredibly crowded there too. And a little bit at D-Bar. So yeah, I've been really lucky. Probably got the best barrel of my life about a month ago at Stratty. Like, I'm 6'6" and I could stand up in it, so I was pretty stoked. I think I was buzzing for about a week after that one.
Hey, that sounds awful for me because I have no coordination skills whatsoever, and I just get barreled if I ever go out that far. But I know, talk to me about your pie business. I know you've been busy with that as well.
Yeah, so about 18 months ago, me and my brother started up a pie business called CUZZIE Pies here on the Gold Coast. Pretty much it started up out of um, just the fact that we couldn't find good pies here in Australia, and the pie culture in New Zealand is really strong, and it even is over here too. Everyone Aussies always talk about how good their pies are, and when we came here, it was like, oh man, they're just disgusting. I couldn't even eat them. And back home, I probably eat a couple of pies every week. So my brother actually kind of came up with the idea. It's like, let's have a crack at it, and then he was living in Sydney at the time, and he kind of like started to put together a few recipes, and we're on the phone pretty much every day, talking about this idea and how we could, work towards getting something that, that I might be able to do when I finish swimming, and we could work together on. And we kind of decided that Nick, my brother, would move up to the Gold Coast and we'd start a business up here. And so that was probably about 18 months now. And since then, we've been, growing really steadily and getting boosted. The sales are going really well at the moment. So it's quite an exciting opportunity for us moving forward.
And COVID's given you a chance to get more stuck into that personally, mate, away from swimming and training and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it really has. It's for kind of the past, I guess, 15 months or so, I've been trying to swim full time and do the business full time, which was it's probably one of the most challenging things I've had to go through in my life, just because I've just had so much on my plate, and I was probably spreading myself a little bit thin at times, but it was a great opportunity for me to really work on time management skills, and it was just a bit of a balancing act, but I think that I learned a lot along the way, and um, just tried to really make both those aspects of my life kind of coherent and work well together.
And the other thing you've been working on during lockdown is that gorgeous, luscious beard of yours. How have you been managing that?
It's pretty disgusting, to be honest. Hopefully, I might get around to shaving it in the next couple of days, but yeah, I don't know. I get a lot of grief for it, to be honest.
Hey,
My
don't worry
man,
about them.
yeah, he's gonna give me grief for it for sure.
2012 London Olympics. Without a doubt, it's the biggest event on any athlete's calendar, and you're at what, 19, 20 at this stage. So that must have been a massive buzz for a young fella.
Yeah, it was going to your first Olympics. There's like nothing really compares to it. I think being a part of the New Zealand Olympic team is really special as well. Like they create such a important cultural experience for their athletes that it's something that you really never forget. The swimming team kind of like they go away, and you go away on your like staging camp, and then when you come into the village, you're greeted by the whole of the New Zealand team comes out to greet you, and they do like a 60-man haka as like you're walking into the village,
Oh,
and
that's
it's just
awesome.
like goosebumps. And then when they finish doing their haka, you like strip your shirt off, get down into the pose, and you give them like a full haka back. And then they probably might even come back with the third haka. So it's just like haka central in the middle of the village. But I think it's all things like that you know that stay with you like for your whole life. And I think that's like one of the great things about being a New Zealander is that we do have that real special cultural significance that we have added to our sport, which is great.
Can just imagine those European countries that don't speak English very well or whatever, just looking at you guys going, hang on, what's going on out there?
Yeah, it's kind of like I would say that like the countries that are like really close to New Zealand would probably get a little bit pissed off by like how many huckers are going down. You know, like the New Zealand team will throw down a hucker at like 3 a.m. in the morning if it's necessary. You know, like we don't really care, but it's great for us. But yeah, it'd be extremely foreign to some countries or people who haven't seen it before.
Now, 2016, you're back in the Olympic arena in Rio. Are the nerves easier to handle now because you've been to an Olympics before? Is it still a bloody big deal? So it doesn't matter how many times you've been there, it's still a big deal.
Yeah, well, I had a bit of Rio was a real interesting one for me because I I think after those 2015 World Championships, where I was coming off an injury and I was like not really that happy with the results. The next 9 months, 10 months, 11 months of training were like by far the best training I'd ever done in my life. I really like got into the swing of the things with Dennis, and like and then I went over and I did that stint training with Bob Bowman and Phelps in the US, and like I was really hitting my straps and doing some incredible training. Um, and then it was 2 months out from, I think it was 2 months out from the Olympics. I slipped going down the stairs and just like totally wrecked my ankle. Like tore every ligament, like broke a few little bones. Like it was real bad. Like I couldn't walk for like 5 or 6 weeks. I couldn't do anything. So my focus went from trying to like do as well as I could in the Olympics is to just like trying to like have my ankle be better than what it is now. You know, my focus like totally changed, and I did a really good job of rehabilitating it. And I got to the Olympics, my ankle was like in pretty good shape, and so like it almost took like most of the pressure off me. I felt like I was just like, okay, like you've already been through like this whole process of this terrible injury at a terrible time. Like now it's just like go out there and enjoy yourself and like swim to the best of your ability. You know, all the hard work's done. So I didn't really feel any nerves at all in Rio, and I actually really enjoyed it. More so, like not really like the results weren't what I would have been able to do had I not hurt my ankle. But I think like I was probably also like the most proud of that result because of the resilience I'd shown over the 8 weeks. And I could have like very easily just been like, oh, stuff it, like I'm just going to stay home and like, like cry myself to sleep for the next 6 months. But I think like going through like all of the rehabilitation and like I worked so incredibly hard. Like everything that I did for like those 8 weeks were like pretty much perfect for like getting my recovery down pat. So like I think that that was the perfect preparation for me. I just had like this unfortunate event of breaking my ankle, falling that like literally slipped down the stairs at 5 in the morning.
Mate, you must have felt like there was a bloody voodoo doll on you, given what had happened the year before with the surfing and then the slipping down the stairs.
Yeah, I was pretty unlucky. Definitely a little bit unlucky, but like I think like you just gotta. Like, I kind of just ended up owning those things. Like there was nothing I could do about it. Like I just tried to trudge on the best I can. Definitely like at the time it was like pretty. Like it was hard to swallow. It was a hard pill to swallow because I think like those were my best years. And I kind of missed out on seeing some swimming that I probably that I didn't get to reach. But at the same time, like that's part of sport. Like being injury resilient is like one of the biggest parts that will like see a person be either successful or not as successful. So, and obviously my flimsy ligaments, like, is not really that, aren't really that good.
But you got any good athlete village stories? Anything you saw any going on? I mean, you're coming towards the end of your career now, so I'm sure you can give things away. You're not going to upset too many people.
Yeah, the village environments are pretty special. Like I think it's definitely something that that every young athlete should be like aspiring to like be a part of one of these villages one day, because it is so much fun. Like leading up to it, um, you just walk around and you're just like, look at that freak, look at that freak, look at that freak, look at that freak. It's like it's a circus. It's an absolute circus. You're like I was probably like, I'm 2 meters tall and I would just be like average height in there. There's so many like ginormous people, and you see the gymnastics people are tiny, and then you see like how muscle bound some guys are, and it's literally just 10,000 people just like totally at the pinnacle of what they do, and it is really inspiring being a part of that. And then after the racing, you just see a whole lot of people who have worked so hard for 4 years, letting their hair down. It's pretty much like it's the best partying you can ever do. Everyone just wants to have a good time. Everyone's in the best of spirits, enjoying themselves. And there's definitely like a lot of things that I probably can't like go into too much more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had like, I'm very lucky that like some of my like best mates I was on teams with, between like the New Zealand team and the Australian team on the swimming side of things. So I got to enjoy a lot of those moments with some of my best mates.
Mate, I tell you, I can't imagine nights out after the Olympics are finished would go too long. With all these guys having been off the booze for so long and been so strict on themselves, wouldn't it just be one or two drinks and we're ready for bed?
Yeah, for the most part, mate. For the most part, especially me, I'm a bit of a lightweight, so I'll use it.
Well, you can tell me the other stories when we stop recording. But you've mentioned some of your biggest influences in terms of when you came over and trained at Miami with Grant and Tommy Fraser Holmes and Dennis, all good friends of yours. And Tommy's a great friend of the show. How impactful were those guys on you?
Oh, very. I think even when what I mentioned earlier, when I moved over in 2011, when I came over for my first training trip in 2011, just watching what guys like Tommy was the same age as me, but he was like 4 or 5 years ahead of me, like in swimming terms. And so I'm just like sponged up as much information as I could get off those guys, watched what they were doing, watched their stroke, and then also just like became really good mates with them. Um, and so I think that like more than anything, moving over here, just like being as welcomed as what I was like something was like really good, like something that like I really appreciate more than anything. Like guys like Tommy, Dan, Grant, especially like Grant after I was here for like 3 months, was like, oh mate, like I've got a spare room in my house, like why don't you come live with me? So I was like, really? Like you're Grant Hackett?
Yeah.
I was like, so yeah, they're just incredibly generous guys with their time, with their knowledge, and yeah, definitely like a few of my best mates.
What about your coach now, Glenn Baker? What impacts he had on your swimming?
Yeah, Glenn's a ripping guy. And a really good coach. I think one of Glenn's greatest strengths is he's very understanding of people. He kind of, when I moved to start training with him, like I was all guns like blazing for Commonwealth Games, which was only 3 months out. He helped me get there, and I did some really good swims. We only just missed out on a medal in the relay, which was a bit of a shame. But after that was kind of almost the starting of a transitioning period in my life. So I was putting a lot more like time and energy into my business, and that took away from some of the stuff I was doing in the pool. I couldn't train like how I used to when I was when I was younger. So, and Glenn was just super understanding of that, and he worked with me to try and get me to the best that I could for this stage in my career. And yeah, that's just like, that's Glenn. You know, he thinks beyond what I think a lot of times he has to, and looks at what's going on outside of the pool, you know, what's going on in this aspect of your life, and how he could best, you know, create a program for me to still be successful in the pool.
And I'm reliably told he's a man who loves his tunes. Have you ever listened to any of his favourite music?
Yeah, me and Glenn are like always chatting about like who's your favourite DJ, you know, what DJ did you see on the weekend, you know, oh, I went and saw this guy, and Glenn's like, oh yeah, we'll play him this morning, and Glenn be like, oh, I went and saw this guy last week, and I was like, mate, the average age of that concert would have been like 20. You're in your mid 40s.
Yeah, no. I've got a few coaching mates who, enjoy their tunes as well, and I know they've been out with Glenn a few times and enjoyed themselves. So I know what sort of music he's into.
Yeah.
Now, mate, does it matter where you are or what squad you're in? Do you ever cop any stick for being a Kiwi over here?
I definitely, people have tried, like non-stop people have tried, but I think for the most part, like I'm probably as quick-witted or more quick-witted than them. I've got all the comebacks for it now.
Very nicely played.
The guy who used to give me the most sticks, Matt Levings, 100%.
And you had his number in terms of comebacks?
Usually, yeah.
Mate, what's it like living with fellow New Zealand team member Dan Hunter?
Oh, Dan's just like an all-round good bloke. You know, really good bloke. Easy to live with. He's getting a lot better on his cooking as well. 2 nights ago, he cooked us a salmon linguine for dinner.
Very nice. And it went down all right?
Beautiful. Great.
What about, you've put him to work with the business?
Yeah, we do like a few different farmers markets on Sunday morning. So he probably works for us like maybe a couple of times a month. The last time he worked, he was actually a bit hungover, so you know, we had to duck his pay, maybe $50 for that morning. I think, you know, got to come sober to the job next time, mate.
Absolutely, that's fantastic, mate. In terms of obviously living with Dan, does it help that you guys are from New Zealand? In terms of, do you ever get homesick? Is it nice to have someone around who reminds you of home?
Yeah, I think I've never really been like much of a guy to get homesick. You know, I'm still like, I'm on the phone like pretty much every week with my family, with my mum and dad, my sister, you know, my close friends back in New Zealand. And it's so easy to stay connected nowadays. You know, like you've got things like Zoom, you know, you can easily pick up the phone, it's cheap, it's no worries. But yeah, it's definitely nice to have someone that really understands the way that we do things in New Zealand is a little bit different to the way Australians do things. So it's nice to have. I've lived with Kiwis the whole time that I've been here as well. So it's nice to have that little slice of home wherever you go.
Mate, talk to me about the current crop of Kiwi swimmers, and how excited are you about the future of New Zealand swimming? Now, I've already talked to obviously Lewis Clareburt, Brad Ashby, spoke to Dan yesterday, and I've got Erica Fairweather coming up, and many more, Zach Reed. How excited are you for where New Zealand swimming is heading? Because to me, from an outsider looking in and talking to you guys, it looks like it's in a pretty positive direction.
Yeah, I think that like the young crop coming through, like really special group of kids. You know, like Michael Pickett, Lewis, Erica, Zach. They're just great kids. You know, and I think that that's going to really translate into them being like going the distance. And I think like I back every one of those guys that they're going to do really good things in the pool. They're so humble, like their head's in the right place. I think they're really like building their confidence as well. Because I think New Zealand's always had incredible swimmers, but I think like being so distant and like far away and like so small, like I think a lot of Kiwi swimmers have always kind of lacked a little bit of confidence and like never really lived up to their potential. The one outlier being Lauren Boyle, who I trained with at Miami. She was just such a star. You know, like you take Ledecky away, who's like a once in a generation absolute freak, and she would be, I think she's got like 4 or 5 silvers at world championships and stuff like that. So, you know, if Ledecky wasn't in the picture, you know, she would be like one of the all-time greats. So, and I think that she does get overshadowed a little bit just because of how great Ledecky was. But yeah, I think Lauren really set like a really good standard for New Zealand swimming and was a great role model, like as when all these younger crew were coming up to be like, oh yeah, like we can compete on the world stage, you know, like we can compete with the Aussies, you know, we can beat the Aussies. And I think that's what these young guys think, you know, that they're like, oh, we've seen Lauren do it, you know, like we can do it as well. And Lewis really showed that this year, or last year, sorry, at World Championships when he pretty much came out of nowhere to win a medal. A big PB, and I think he's only going to get better and better as well.
Mate, what about, you know, when you hang up the goggles and the togs, and I'm not saying that has to be anytime soon, that's completely your your deal, but when you do, what do you want people to remember most about you as a swimmer and as an athlete for New Zealand?
I think I just like, more than anything, just want to be seen as someone who like added value to the sport, you know, like left the sport in a better place than when I started it, especially in New Zealand. I think that's pretty important for me. You know, I wanted to have added to the team culture, you know, hopefully inspired some young kids to do swimming in the first place, and for like just to see swimming as like a good opportunity to better yourself in life. I think that's like a huge thing. Like there's so much, you know, you might not get like, swimming's not really a sport that you should be trying to get into to like make money or like wealth or even connections and stuff like that. But the intrinsic value of swimming is incredible. You know, what it teaches you about resilience, about hard work, you know, about processes is just like next to none. So I think of anything, you know, I think that's kind of like the legacy that I want to leave is like, you know, how like how I went about some things really well and like how other people could follow that. I'm not saying I've done everything right, but plenty of things wrong. But I think like I'm always willing to try and learn from those things that I didn't do right.
In terms of when you hang up the togs, mate, when have you got any clarity around when you might walk away from pool deck?
Yeah, well, I actually just have decided to retire last week. So um, Tokyo was like always going to be my last hurrah. Like I was always going to hang up the togs after that. I've been in business now for, well, I would have been in business for full 18 months. Tokyo would have probably been starting soon, right? So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
for me, like the decision was actually pretty easy because, you know, I've got something that I can pretty much step right into, and trying to work full time on your own business and train full time is like pretty much impossible. You know, like you just there isn't enough time in the day, and like no one's got enough energy to work a 50-hour week, working in kitchens, working at markets, at events, trying to manage staff, and then on top of that, training 20 hours a week in the pool, and then gym sessions and stretching and all the things that you need to be able to focus on to be a good swimmer. So at the end of the day, I think the level of uncertainty around the next year and like what the Olympics might look like actually made my decision quite easy, because I was going to have to choose between my business or my swimming. And with the way things are, with what could be happening with swimming at the moment, it made the decision pretty easy.
Well, mate, firstly, I want to say thank you very much for coming on the show. I know you're a very busy man with your pie business, but also I wanted to say thank you very much for for your contribution to swimming and swimming in New Zealand. I know we're talking to a lot of the boys, how much they look up to you and how much you've done for the sport. And obviously, I talk to a lot of the Aussie boys as well, and I know how high they hold you as well, with Tommy Fraser-Holmes and Alex Graham and these boys. So congratulations with the legacy, and we touched on it before, but I think you've definitely left a brilliant legacy on the sport and the swimming in New Zealand. So congratulations that you can hold your head up high, mate, and be proud of that. And I'm excited for your pie business. I definitely want to try. I'm a guy who loves his pies, as you can tell. So I do love to sit on the hill and watch some footy and have a pie. So I'll definitely be keeping in touch for that. But mate, until then, thank you very much for coming on Off the Block Swimming Podcast.
Yeah, thanks a lot, mate. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed our chat. I hope the audience enjoys it as well.
I'm sure they'll love it, mate. Us two shooting the breeze. What's not to love?
Yeah, exactly.
Today's episode of Off the Block Swimming Podcast is proudly brought to you by Arena Australia and Arena NZ.